Hello, everyone. This is Diverge Media, and I'm your host, Greg Staley. We'll be talking about Justin Trudeau and going to the SHE conference to talk about gender equality. We will also be discussing Dr.Eileen De Villa's husband's relationship, financial relationship disclosures in an event called CVUPDATE 2020 that he attended. And here we go. We're going to treat this one as a live stream. It's been a while since I've done one, so I'm rusty. But here we go. I'm going to give you the absolute best I got. And thank you for tuning in again tonight to Diverge Media. Let's start out with the Prime Minister. On the Prime Minister, he had digitally attended something called the SHE Conference of 2020. This is their website here. Now, this was released in a news release in his itinerary. So, media advisory, Prime Minister's itinerary for Friday, March 5th, 2021. Ottawa, private meetings, but 3:20 a.m. A panel discussion with the Prime Minister on the global perspective of equality leading for all will be streamed as part of the SHE conference. The Prime Minister will speak alongside the Prime Minister of Norway, Erna Solberg, and the Prime Minister of Iceland, Katrin, I can't say her last name, Jakobsdóttir, and the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. So it was streamed here, but it was released at 3:20 in the morning. This is what he was up to. Now, he was asked, we listened in on the tape, so that you didn't have to if you don't want to, but there's also a video released of just his talking portions on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. But here's what the question was that stuck out to Diverge Media. So while attending the conference, Prime Minister Trudeau was asked the following question by a host, Mark Edo. We just heard when we were talking to Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton about just how much of an effect and continues to be an effect COVID-19 is, but is it an opportunity to also rethink our approach to gender equality and inequality? Is it like never waste a good crisis, Justin? Trudeau's answer, and he says, and I quote, "I think so. I mean, first of all, we're all friends on this call who've stepped up, as Sadiq has said in various ways, on advancing gender equality, but we're recognized for all the things we've done. There's a lot more to do. There's a lot more to do to have that really tangible impact. I mean, we got elected 5 years ago with a gender-balanced cabinet. I've just moved forward with the first Canadian finance minister who's a woman, Chrystia Freeland." He couldn't say enough about it. He said, Chrystia Freeland, who's known to many people, I'm sure, in the audience, but at the same time, everything we do has to be focused on the experiences that people are living. And we know that whether it's on pay equity or childcare, or the fact that this COVID challenge, that has hit women in the service industry in low-income jobs harder than a usual recession does, that really layers on the intersectionalities of people who are already marginalized are facing greater barriers. So it kind of made sense, but not really. But he strung the sentence together. I digress. It becomes not just an opportunity, as you say, Mark, to look at things differently, but a responsibility to realize that this crisis is showcasing gaps that exist in our society that we do need to fill, that we just can't paper over and shrug off. He went on to say, one of the great examples in Canada is we've been talking about bringing in universal national childcare for a long time now. It's sort of a patchwork across the country, different jurisdictions that do it. One of the things that's happened over this pandemic is the business community has suddenly, and as he said it, he let out a quick chuckle, realized the impact of their business on everything going on when people have to stay home and care for kids. When women simply can't rejoin the workforce because, as Erna pointed out earlier, they carry a heavier burden in terms of childcare, in terms of responsibility around the home. So he went on to say, moving forward in childcare is something we finally feeling like we're going to be able to do, because it's not just a moral argument, it's a concrete economic argument. As we've always known, he was pretty smug about making that point, but it's being more resident now. So there's a lot of tangible things we can and need to do as leaders right now in our countries and around the world. So you can read the rest of that on our page there for the article itself. Trudeau agrees, never waste a good crisis. So right out of the gate, he's asked, is it like never waste a good crisis, Justin? And he begins his answer with, I think so. So he's not above using a crisis to advance his goals, but I am not personally surprised. I don't know, maybe that will surprise you as a listener at home. Now, I looked into the SHE conference a little bit so we can just make sure, and I looked into how much tickets would be. Now, to buy a ticket, we can pull it up here. Together we change, buy ticket now. So, full ticket access if you're attending and paying in private, access to 2-week program on a digital platform, 3-month access to the SHE Conference 2021 content. Full ticket access is $9.99. And okay, this is the Norwegian krone. So I looked it up, $499 for access. Tickets are running about $74.18 Canadian, according to the exchange. Now, it's interesting to note some of the sponsors. It doesn't much mean anything, but these are the partners of people that have partnered alongside of SHE Conference. We see Cisco, we see Microsoft, we see Deloitte, we see some big companies that have partnered with these guys. So he's speaking there on gender equality, and that's what was released this morning at 3:20 a.m. So if you want to check that out, check out our article, or you can check out the itinerary itself to see what the Prime Minister was up to. But now on to the story I'm sure everyone actually wants to hear about, which is simply Dr.Eileen De Villa. Now, this story is blowing up currently and putting a ton of traffic on the website. Now, obviously, people are curious as to what this means, and I can't say definitively, but let's go through this together. Now, when it comes to Dr.Eileen De Villa, Toronto's medical. I wrote the article. Toronto's medical officer, Dr. Eileen De Villa's husband, has financial relationships with major vaccine manufacturers. Is this a conflict of interest? Now, you may have seen pictures that were going around that showed Dr. Richard Choi, Dr. Eileen De Villa's husband. There's a PDF file that was going around, and basically what I did is I used the PDF file's URL and backed it up, looked that up, and found CVUPDATE. Now, this was the event that Dr. Eileen De Villa's husband spoke at for cardiovascular on-demand symposium. If you go here, this will be his work, and he's in here. This is also included in our article. But on the agenda, when he was due to speak, I found this interesting. Everything, there's not one unaccredited portion, I don't think, in the rest of, nope, just that one there. So when the only time, for my knowledge, that was unaccredited that Dr. Richard Choi, or that CVUPDATE 2020 had, was when Dr. Richard Choi spoke between 6 and 7 p.m. on June 12th of 2020. You can see 6 and 7 p.m. symposium, unaccredited. See symposium for details, session link, click it. It says whoops, but it says see symposium for details. Where'd it go? So symposium, see symposium tab on website for details. So they don't even have that up. You go on demand symposium, and that's this video here. So that's how I found it. Confirm it was actually Dr. Richard Choi. Whereas a Toronto Sun article I read, we were talking about why this might matter in the grand scheme of things. Now, we'll come back to that. Sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained here. But basically, here we are from the PDF on the website. Maybe it's better. This is the actual PDF that was going around that I was sent. This is from the event itself. Now, you can see it's the same report, Navigating Vascular. It's the same report we were just looking at, but when we get down here, speaker disclosures, Dr. Richard Choi, relationships with financial interest. He had research support from AstraZeneca and Bayer, and Speakers Bureau honoraria and consultant fees from AstraZeneca, Bayer, Boehringer Ingelheim and Lilly, BMS, Pfizer, HLS, Novartis, Sanofi, and Servier. Now, we don't know what the extent of those consult fees or Speakers Bureau or honoraria or research support looks like. But ultimately, the question that I asked is, Is this a conflict of interest? Her husband, a woman who is in a position as a medical officer of health for Toronto, her husband is taking research funds from, I don't want to put words in the mouth, but it's taking research funds from AstraZeneca, or research support rather, it doesn't say funds, research support from AstraZeneca and Bayer. And there it says, under speaker disclosures at this event on June 12, 2020 at CVUPDATE 2020, the Speakers Bureau honorary and consulting fees came from AstraZeneca, Bayer, on and on the list goes. Pfizer's in there as well. And the question that is asked is this a conflict of interest? Somebody whose wife is a medical officer for an entire major city for Canada and for an entire country, they are taking research support from the same manufacturers of the vaccines that are being pushed. AstraZeneca, Bayer, Pfizer's in there. Now, we ask the question, again, is it a conflict of interest? Is it factoring into Dr. Eileen De Villa's relationship? We look at the fact that this is from the Toronto Sun. Lily, Tory and Davila need to stop the fear and start the responsible reopening. Now, they don't need to be in gray lockdown zone. They could lift the lid, but they've advocated to stay in red. So Toronto should be stay in gray, in control zone rather. It says Toronto should be heading into the red or control zone in the provincial COVID-19 framework. But don't expect that to happen after Mayor John Tory and his medical officer, Dr. Eileen De Villa, asked the province not to lift the lid too much. The city is asking to be placed into gray zone, a move that will barely change anything for those of us wanting to end the draconian stay-at-home order. So now we factor in that her husband is taking research support from AstraZeneca and Bayer, and her husband's also Speakers Bureau honorary consulting fees, AstraZeneca, Bayer, Pfizer's in there. Now, if it's not a conflict of interest, it's definitely terrible optics. I don't know what the depth or scope of those are. It is pretty normal for doctors to take consult fees and different things like that. But the question, again, is it a conflict of interest when it is the husband of a medical officer of a major city? This is the question. And is it something in general? I think at the end of the day is something that people just deserve to know. I think the optics are terrible. The fact that it's not common knowledge to the public, it's undisclosed. If the public knew and they said, okay, keep her in, that's one thing, but we need to address the question and not leave it alone entirely. So that's basically it in a nutshell. You can check out the actual event in the article. We have it included as well, but we'll just skip through here. That's her husband here, Dr. Richard Choi, as we can see in the yellow shirt. And again, same here. Now, I included an article in there that does link that Dr. Richard Choi of Cardiologist St. Joseph's Health Center back to her as her husband, just to make sure that I had the right person. And here's what, this isn't directly relative, but this next part I'm going to read is an American firm's look at taking fees and consult fees and things like of that nature from pharma. So here's what they have to say. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, this is Holland and Knight. I believe this is I want to say a legal website, but here we are. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Inspector General has issued a special fraud alert to highlight and warn healthcare professionals of inherent fraud and abuse risk associated with speaker fees, honorariums, and expenses paid by pharmaceutical and medical device companies to healthcare professionals participating in company-sponsored events. Now, I will stress this is American, not Canadian, and I don't know how the laws differ, but needless to say, this is what they're saying in the States about this kind of thing. And here's their take on honorarium fees, speaker fees. They're basically saying, be extremely careful. And they issued a special fraud alert to highlight and warn healthcare professionals of inherent fraud and abuse risk associated with speaker fees, honorariums, and expenses paid. Now, it doesn't mean they're all going to be inherent fraud. It just means there's a great risk, and I don't think that maybe healthcare practitioners are aware of all of them, and that's why they issued the special alert. I'll continue. Although educational programs sponsored by a company may serve a worthwhile purpose and are not altogether discouraged by the OIG, such programs will face increased scrutiny due to significant company resources being used to host such events. Two enforcement actions by the U.S. Department of Justice in the past 2 months have highlighted the serious risk associated with such programs. Consistent with its previous alerts, the OIG emphasized the remuneration offered and paid to healthcare professionals implicate and may violate the anti-kickback statute if the purpose and intent of the payment is to induce or reward referrals. So again, may not add up quite the same here, but thought it was an interesting look a little bit into their take on it. They're issuing a special warning on it to be careful. So again, it doesn't mean Dr. Eileen De Villa's husband has committed a conflict of interest or fraud or anything of the sort. It just means that the optics are certainly bad. They definitely need to be looked in, and full disclosure is definitely needed. We need to understand the scope and depth of the relationships that her husband has, because at the end of the day, if those same types of reps that her husband is dealing with, those same type of relationships have made their way into her day-to-day work somehow, that needs to be known. And I'm not saying it has. I'm just saying this is the type of full disclosure that's needed. We need to understand the implications of this information. And I want to say a special thank you to Randy Hillier for retweeting the article, as well as their PCR article talking about cycle thresholds. You've been quite a vocal advocate fighting against the lockdowns, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate you sharing our work as well and introducing people to Diverge Media. So again, on the Dr. Eileen De Villa thing, I'm not sure what it means, where I fall on it, but I certainly think it's something the public should know. I think it shouldn't have slipped through the cracks. I think people should know that there was a financial relationship disclosed. And it's not like it was disclosed recently. It was disclosed at an event on June 12th in 2020. So there's been quite a length of time that's gone by. The media missed it. And now the question is, how long has this relationship persisted? They said there was research support. Well, how long has that research support been in place? And what for? And then you go into the honoraria fees and things like that. What does that look like? Now, there's something you can check out. I'm not playing it in tonight's live stream, simply because it's American and I don't know how it translates over to the different laws. But you can check out something if you want to look at some of the influence pharma has in the United States anyways, and how they play the game there. On Ben Swan's channel, Truth in Media, if you look up just Ben Swan and pharma, you should be able to find a bunch of videos that he's done on them. I feel were well-researched pieces that are very informative and worth your time. So hope everything is okay. I think I have one more thing for everyone here. Sorry, everyone. Yes, we did have one more thing. I forgot to pull it up. So in addition, I'm going to pull something else up. If you donate to Diverge Media now, and you happen to be into Bitcoin, we now have a Bitcoin wallet. You can send us digital Bitcoin straight to Diverge Media as a donation. If you go to specifically or donate to Diverge Media tab on the website and drop down, or you can just do cash donations, but we're starting to branch out into what we're going to take as donations. So if that's something that interests you, we'd absolutely love it. And thank you. Now, this is a story that we thought was important. It stuck out to us, and it'll make obvious sense once we read through it. But a Fox 10 news anchor resigns, says, "I no longer want to do this job." So on Tuesday, the top-rated Fox 10 news anchor, Carrie Lake, posted a video on Rumble resigning from her job of 22 years, stating that she no longer wanted to do the job anymore because of the state of journalism in the country. She said, quote, "Sadly, journalism has changed a lot since I first stepped into a newsroom. And I'll be honest, I don't like the direction it's going. The media needs more balance in coverage and a wider range of viewpoints represented in every newsroom, at every level, and each position, and in each position. Now, she says she hasn't felt proud in the media for a while now. Quote, in the past few years, I haven't felt proud to be a member of the media. I'm sure there are other journalists out there who feel the same way. She began to realize that she didn't fully agree with the way the news she began to realize she didn't agree with the way the news was being presented. I found myself reading news copies that I didn't believe were fully truthful or only told part of the story, and I began to feel that I was contributing to the fear and division in this country by continuing on in this profession. It's been a serious struggle for me, and I no longer want to do this job anymore. So I've decided that the time is right to do something else, and I'm leaving Fox. I thank Fox for their understanding as I come to the decision, and I'm grateful for the many opportunities they provided for me to cover so many big stories over the years. After I close this chapter of my career, there will probably be hit pieces about me. Not everyone is dedicated to telling the truth, but thankfully many of you have already figured that out. I promise you, if you hear it from my lips, it will be truthful. Lake says she's scared of walking away, but knows that ultimately God has her back. It is scary walking away from a good job and a successful career, especially in difficult times. But I know God has my back and will guide me to work that aligns with my values. She said, thank you so much for your friendship, trust and friendship all these years. I will keep in touch, and I hope you will do the same. So obviously, this is something a lot of people say. There's bias in media, and there's they don't tell truth. They sow division and fear. And here's a mainstream news journalist of 22 years, award-winning, I believe. I'm not sure on that, but I'm pretty sure she is. She's a highly rated journalist. And she's saying, enough. I couldn't handle it anymore. Wasn't proud of the work I was doing. And had enough. It's been a serious struggle for me, and I no longer want to do this job anymore, she said. So she felt she was reading news that was contributing to fear and division in the country. And so maybe that's validation for a lot of people to see somebody in a mainstream media position walk away saying those exact things. I definitely feel personally, in my personal opinion, that media misses the mark a lot on getting the balance right. There's a lot of things. It's not necessarily that they don't report on things. It's that there's not a balance when they report on them. So if you report on something 50 times and then you say you reported on the other side of the story, but you report on it 10 times, well, it's a 5-to-1 ratio. So this is what they do, in my opinion, and that's where the bias comes in, and they contribute to the fear and division. I can agree with that statement because they focus on things that cause fear and division because ultimately, in my opinion, the psychology of it is drives clicks, it drives views, and it drives profits. Thank you for tuning in to Diverge Media. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that you can get our videos on Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern.